You ever found yourself wanting to clean some metal parts, shine them up, you found them there all rusty, and you're like, ah, forget that, it's too much work, I'm not going to scrub, because face it, scrubbing and scrubbing and scrubbing is not fun. However, if you do want to do this, all you have to do is create an electrolysis tank in your house. It's very simple, minimal parts, minimal money, but you save maximum time. Let's check it out. My part's been submerged for about 4.5 hours now. The cool thing about doing this process is you can actually work on something else while your part's pretty much self-cleaning. You know it's working when the water ends up looking very sludgy like this. It's extremely important to note that you do stainless steel, you're going to be creating a carcinogen that's deadly. I'll be pulling this part out in a minute and go over the parts on how to build it, and then I'll actually end up submerging another part so you can hopefully see the bubbles start. To get started with your electrolysis tank, you're going to need a few things. First, you need a car charger. You're going to need some sodium carbonate. Borax isn't actually sodium carbonate. It's slightly different. This is the first time I've used it. Normally you want the Arm & Hammer baking powder. That's the best to use, but so far it seems like it's working because I see a whole bunch of rust deposits. The bubbling was going and now it stopped. After the detergent, you're gonna want some wire brushes. The wire brushes will help clean the part. You still have to do a little bit of scrubbing when it's done. Keep in mind, if you have a battery charger like this one, it's not gonna work. It has a built-in feature that unless it's hooked up to an actual battery and it doesn't fill a charge, it's not going to provide electricity to the water. So I have a secondary one. It's simple. I think this one came from Harbor Freight as well. Cost maybe like $10. I don't know. You're going to want some anodes. I like using angle iron. I mean, not angle iron. I like using rebar. The rebar works perfect because you can drill a couple holes in the sides and zip tie them in. You need some copper wire to attach each rebar together that goes straight into the water. When you submerge your part, you want to make sure that it's not touching the rebar. And then you're going to hook up your negative lead to your part, and you're going to hook up your positive lead to your anode. Okay, so we're going to take off the power to the tank, disconnect the attachments. And when you pull the part out, you're going to realize that it's going to look still pretty nasty. It's going to be all black. Fortunately, I don't have a before photo to show you, but it was completely rusted. This came off the same thing. We'll be submerging this later. Typical surface rust, some pitting. This still had, I forget what it's called, but it's the paint that they used back in the day, but it looks dirty. And that's the reason why we have the wire brushes. We're going to scrub and clean. You can still see some rust, but all this should, if it works perfect, should all come off with just a little bit of elbow grease, nowhere near as much needed before. I will scrub and show you the after results. Alright, so by looking at this, it took about 5 minutes of scrubbing with a metal brush. You use a stainless steel brush. Some of this coating that Stanley put on back, I think this was made in the 30s. It didn't really react too well with the electrolysis. I know a lot of paint that I've used, a lot of parts I've put in with paint in the past is taken off. I don't know if it's because of this particular type of coating or if it was the borax versus the Arm & Hammer straight sodium carbonate that's supposed to be used. But as you can tell, there's still some imperfections. I'll be taking this down starting with 60 grit, working all the way to 2000 grit to try to polish up to a nice beautiful shine. But if you wanted, really and truly, put a little coat of oil on this and it's ready to go. You wouldn't have to worry about much rust. You can see there's still some spots. I need to go back and scrub. I missed a couple. You don't really notice until you actually get it back and you dry it and you see where everything is. Do keep in mind that the surface rust will come back rather quickly. That's why you want to try to paint it or oil it right away. But considering what this looked like 4 hours ago to what this looks like now, and I've only got 5 minutes of elbow grease in it, electrolysis is definitely the way to go. I wouldn't suggest anything else if you could get away with it. All you need is a big enough tank. One thing I was worried about was the fact that my ends were touching because I didn't have a bucket big enough, and I wasn't going to go out to buy one, so I emptied my wood bucket. It's just a plastic tote like I showed earlier. Wasn't big enough, so the part was touching on both ends of the plastic. I just made sure that it wasn't touching the anodes, and it still came out pretty well. Everywhere rust was, it's gone now, and a lot of the paint actually came off too. Remember, as long as you don't use stainless steel, this water is completely safe to dump in your backyard if you wanted to. If you got paint in there, you want to address that as well. Make sure that you take the paint chips out and stuff. But as long as it's just rust, that's all it is rust. It can go back in the ground. If you use stainless steel, keep in mind you will be penalized heavily if you're caught dumping that. I'm actually gonna try to do 3 parts at once. Let me go into the light. I apologize about the lighting in here. I'm not set up to do videos, but as you can see, these parts are crazy rusted. If I can get my camera to focus, there's just rust everywhere. I'm gonna let them go. You can keep in mind, one thing that's awesome about this is you cannot overcharge them. Once all the rust is gone, they're pretty much just gonna stop. They're gonna stop, and they're not gonna continue to break down any further. So you don't have to worry about your part deteriorating if you left it in here too long. To connect it, you want the negative lead, the black, to go to the part, or in this case the parts. And I don't know if this is going to work. This is the first time I've done multiple parts at once, but they're not touching the anodes, so I'm comfortable saying I think it will. Then you take the positive lead. It's hard doing this with one hand. You take the positive lead, or the red one, and you hook it to the anode. Once you do that, you plug in your battery charger. And within a few moments, you should be able to see it start bubbling. So I'm not sure if you can catch this on the camera, but you can actually see bubbles are starting to come to the surface and wrap around the metal. That's the hydrogen and oxygen being separated. Not going to go crazy into it because I don't understand all the science behind it. I just know the setup's pretty easy to do and anybody can do it themselves. A couple of safety features to focus on. Once again, you're dealing with electricity. You want to make sure that you're comfortable when you're doing this. If you're afraid of electricity, I highly recommend staying away from it. If you do want to do this and you're not worried, just keep your hands out of the water. Don't touch the wires when everything's hot. Make sure you disconnect the charger before you start disconnecting the leads and pulling your parts out of the water. Typical safety things to think about. Alright, been going about an hour. It's still bubbling, but I'm gonna go ahead and cut it off and clean it up. I don't expect it to be completely done. I probably would let it go for at least another hour, but I'm getting old and it's past my bedtime. So let me kill the power and pull them out and get it cleaned up. So as you can see, there's still some rust spots on there. Most of it's turned to that black sludge I was telling you about. Not too much. I wasn't planning on actually putting these in the machine anyways. I just wanted to do it to show you a demonstration of how nice it is to not have to scrub. They're just, these parts just so happen to be small enough. They work great on my wire wheel anyways. Alright, let me take them apart. Alright, it's been going for a little while. Like I said, could have went longer. I don't think they're going to clean up as good as they could if they would have sat in the machine, if they would have sat in the tank longer. But you see all that crud on there? All it takes is just quite little scrubbing, and it'll come off. Still a lot of black on this, but that's really all the scrubbing you have to do. If I would have just left it in another hour, but like I said, I'm old. It's past my bedtime. Hope y'all enjoy this video.